Hello everyone and welcome back to the Hidebound Convivium. It is your friendly neighborhood HideCon here with some great news about the channel. Want to address some updates on the channel, and then I actually had a short story I was going to share with you guys just to make sure there was actual content in this video and not just me flapping my gums. Just I wanted to inflate my ego by talking about myself. So I'm going to inflate my ego a different way. I'm going to share with you a short story that I wrote a while back. This first appeared on the Canis Society forums, which you can check out at canissociety.org. And we've been having some trouble getting people subscribed to the forums, but we'll do our best to get you on there. And that serves as a stable depository for written materials in the event of purgings of right-wing opinion from certain online platforms. But regardless, that's the first place that this story appeared. And before I get into the story, actually, I think I'll give you the story first, and then I'll give you the background, because you may or may not be interested in it. But at any rate, the title of this story is simply The Steppe, and so I will go ahead and grace you guys with my technically award-winning story, because it did win awards at my university. Oh yes, one thing I did want to mention is if anyone is confused, it is written in the form of a journal. So every entry will begin with a date. At any rate, here we go. The Steppe. February 2nd. It was snowing when our self-propelled guns made their way through the village of V. The first snow of the new year, although the ground was already covered in powder. We were to the rear of the Third Army. But when we decamped in the village square, I noticed that the 12th Company was setting up semi-permanent habitations. We would not, then, be activated to assist the Third Army on the front. There are 1,400 villagers and 300 of us. February 3rd. The steppe works on a man's mind in peculiar ways. I was kept awake all last night by dreams of riding the golden waves on a fleet steed like Genghis Khan, dreams of tent cities and Roman plunder, but mostly dreams of a castaway. The hills are like waves, frozen in their crests and peaks, and the village is like the most desolate of islands. The villagers eat nothing but what comes from the cattle, milk, cheese, meat. Nothing is planted in this soil, and the river winds through the province, almost as if it is sneaking back out again to evade detection. They are at the mercy of this vast sea, and so am I. March 13th. The snow is cleared, but the village has suffered. 300 mouths were too many, and now there is famine. Supplies from the capital will not arrive. When could they arrive? Perhaps there was no capital anymore. The reports from the front are confusing. The enemy is across the river, then they are 40 miles distant. Where is the enemy? No one knows. A woman stole some meat from the command tent last night. I know what happened to the family, but I never heard a shot. They must have used bayonets or daggers, or maybe their hands. In my bunk, I think about the commissar's hands on my throat. I think they have always been there. I never think of having a gun to my head. Always hands at my throat. March 15th. We have been here 2 months, and our mission is finally clear. I shot a man today. I was resting my rifle against the earth and nursing the hunger pains. 200 villagers starved to death. Need 100 more for an equilibrium. A man came over the rise, and I asked my commissar what I was to do. It was broad daylight. The uniform was unmistakably Third Army. He said, "Shoot him." So I did. I knew we were a cleaner crew. We kept the Third Army fighting. So strange that 300 men could keep an army of 20,000 locked to the enemy's throat. The enemy was fighting and struggling, but as long as we were there, the Third Army would not relax its grip. March 16th. I dreamt of Commissar's hands again. This time I had my rifle. Who was the enemy? Dead dreams, dead dreams. He told me to kill my dreams, pick up the rifle and never stop until the dreams were dead. Dreams are an epiphenomenon of a sick brain. The steppe is making me sick because I have dreams. I went to the medical tent and they gave me tranquilizers. I took them and felt tranquil. March 19th. I no longer dream of hands. I dream of nothing. I wake up to open steppe sky, blue as blood in the veins. I sleep to the heartbeat of the cattle. Their heartbeat is irregular because the cattle are sick. Our commander gunned down 600 heads of cattle to avoid the disease spreading into the rest of the herd, but too late, too late. It is a capital disease, can't be killed. We brought our own capital disease to these people and to the Third Army. 40 men so far, traitors, deserters. We stopped one before we shot him and asked him for news from the front. He just shook his head. The enemy is hunger and disease and cold in the mountain passes. He had never seen the enemy. He had, though, I wanted to say. We were the enemy. April 8th. The villagers are agitated. The snow has melted, and they are asking to leave for why. Commander let them, but they won't bring us back anything like they promised. They will abandon the village piecemeal. I can see it. What does that leave for us? Empty houses, dead fires. I walked out to the Sky God post, a tall post on a hill draped in rags and skins. The arms of the Sky God reminded me of the outstretched arms of the deity of blood I had seen in the west. The Sky God was real and terrible to me, and I gave him some bullets as an offering. Later that day, the sky opened up and it rained. The company was drenched. I could see that my offering was rejected. April 14th. The villagers that left for Y have not returned yet, and the commander is uneasy. He killed 100 today, 100 yesterday, 300 left in the night, but the rest stayed because they feared the punishment if they ran. How could they hope to live on the ocean, on the steppe? The steppe is a prison with open walls you can see through. The dreams are back. I stopped taking my tranquilizers. The Sky God will listen to me if he can speak to me, come to me in dreams. Mostly I dream of the Commissar's hands again. My throat is dry. April 18th. The cattle are dead. The men are starving. The quarantine worked, but the rest of the herd was culled by the villagers. That started it up. They got into the weapons caches. They have rifles and grenades. For now we sleep on the temple hill. The Sky God stands above it all. Can he give me a dream? Can I dream before I die? April 19th. The village is under siege. I shot a villager today, right between the arms. In the heart, I assume. He held his breast like his heart was broken. His face was pained. Blood for blood. I left my own blood on the bullets for the Sky God. His rags have been torn down and used as bandages, but the skeleton remains. The skins remain. He hasn't come to me yet, but he will. He will. April 21st. They're all dead. The steppe is quiet. I killed a small child. Why did I do that? It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do? It was the merciful thing to do. Steppe has no mercy on me, but I have mercy on the steppe children. April 24th. 100 men from the Third Army, all dead. What happened at the pass 3 days ago? It's hard to say. We never let them say. Just gunned them down. No foods, no guns, just bullets. We can't eat bullets. We can only shoot traitors with bullets. We broke into the houses, but they're all empty. The commissar said the villagers were counter-revolutionaries. I could not agree less. I never saw them pay attention to anything but the revolution of the earth, the way it makes the chests of the cattle go up and down, the way the river sputters and bubbles in the grass. Sky God answered me. My prayers? He appeared with a vessel of blood. Drink it up, he said. It tasted strange. It was blue, not oxygenated, bitter and stinging, like vodka. We decamp tomorrow. We move on to H, but not before I look into the houses. We are set to leave by the eastern road. Where we will go is beyond me, probably to another spider den, and the sky god will leave me behind. May 3rd. I found a canteen in one of the yurts, open at the top. On the outside there was blood, but I wiped it with my sleeve. The inside was dry but for one drop. One drop was left to the villagers. One drop they hadn't taken. As we marched out on the eastern road, we crossed the river. I knelt and filled the canteen. It absorbed the water with its tassels, wool decorating metal. It was a deep drinking canteen in a shallow river. On to H. I suspect we will die there. I hope we will. My throat is cold and wet. So thank you guys. That was my short story. It, like I said, it won an award at my university. I entered in a short story contest, but that's neither here nor there. One of the things I wanted to talk about was sort of the symbolism or the reason behind the story, what made me write it in the first place. And as embarrassing as that might be to say, I was actually inspired to write the story by a video game. I wrote it over last winter break, and during that break, I was actually interested in watching people play this old Russian computer game called Pathologic. Now, if you're not familiar with the video game, it's sort of clunky and it doesn't look very good, even by the time period standards. But essentially, what it is this surreal sort of investigative horror game where you play as a doctor, essentially essentially to cure a disease in a surreal, partially Russian, partially Mongolian, secluded village on the steppe. And I found the setting to be particularly evocative, particularly interesting. Now, this was after I had taken a course on the history of the English language, and I became intensely interested with the Proto-Indo-Europeans, the people who used to live in southern Ukraine, who are the sort of the parent civilization of most extant European civilizations, with the North Indians included there, as Indo-European would suggest. And what I found interesting about the setting was how it is evocative of both this sort of ancient, root of our modern civilizations, and the sort of timeless quality that the geographic region has, with just the concept of the steppe itself. And if you've ever seen pictures of the Russian steppe, or you've ever seen, videos from like nature documentaries or something, one of the things you note about it is that it is vast. You're talking about Central Asia, a land region of the world that is basically barren for hundreds of miles. No trees, just rolling hills and grass, and that's basically it. And it's this intensely cerebral, intensely spiritual place, because there's a reason perhaps that the sort of the original sky god myth, the sky father, who is sort of the antecedent of Zeus and Jupiter and Tengri in Mongolian mythology, and all these sort of father deities. It's no mistake that they start out in this geographic region, just because there is so much sky. There's nothing blocking your view of the horizon except for the hills that dip up and down. So there's so much sky that it almost seems like you're being sandwiched between the earth and the sky. And anyways, circling back to this video game, one of the themes that seemed to run through the video game was the whole idea of the conflict between modern sort of scientific material understandings of the world and these sort of mythological, spiritual understandings in the world. That's usually, this is associated with one of the player characters in the game, Daniil Dankovsky, who is the doctor who is sent from the capital. And he embodies this sort of materialistic mindset, whereas there's another player character who is basically some sort of a witch doctor, and just the townsfolk in general have a more supernatural outlook. And so that theme, and I'm not going to say anything else to spoil the game if anyone was interested in playing it, but one of the interesting things about the setting was this combination of scientific, brute scientific materialism and this sort of spiritual, this ancient spirituality that has been at the heart of these sort of ethereal people living out on the steppe for tens of thousands of years. And the way that I represented that conflict in the story was by setting it in, even though the story is kind of timeless or anachronistic or whatever you would call it, in the sense that there's no real specific dates given, there's no specifics at all given, actually, other than just it takes place in the steppe. But from piecing together, bits of story, you can kind of understand that the protagonist or the narrator is a Russian soldier during World War II. And this is part of an operation in Siberia against the Japanese. And I thought that historically this would be an interesting place to have these two worldviews meet. And at the end, what the soldier realizes is that he is there as an agent of this sort of pitiless, materialistic, atheistic worldview, epitomized by communism. And as soon as they come into the village, they start destroying everything. The people especially, obviously, but then along with them, all their cattle, their culture, their way of life, it's all destroyed. And as this process is going on, he becomes sort of in tune with the spiritual aspect of the region, which is epitomized by his being drawn to the Sky God post. In Mongolia, they have these posts that you would almost think of them like a scarecrow, but they have these posts that are decorated with cow skulls and things like that, and these are supposed to be effigies of Tengri, the Sky God. And the way that it's usually set up is that it is a cross. So, he actually associates Tengri with Christ, because there's a line in the story where he compares the Sky God to the blood deity from the West, which of course is Christ, who is, in most churches depicted on the crucifix. And this is a way of implicitly connecting that sort of ancient spirituality of Central Asia, which, like I said, is sort of foundational for Western civilization, with Christianity. But also, through his relationship with this sky deity, he comes to understand the true nature of the people living on the land and what they are doing to them. And similarly, what the outlook of the communists has done to the communists themselves, where they are in the process of eating each other, because of course the unit that the soldier is a part of is a cleaner crew. They're there specifically to shoot deserters from the army that's actually fighting on the front. And this is a thing that the Soviet army actually did. As a matter of fact, Leon Trotsky, it's actually interesting. I remember talking to a woman who was a public school teacher, so this tells you everything you need to know about public schools. I was talking to a woman who was a public school teacher, and she said, man, if only Leon Trotsky had gotten in charge instead of Stalin, then the Soviet Union would have been great. And we would all be communists now. And, if I'm sure you guys have heard something like this before. It's sort of the laughable cope that a lot of people use to sort of deflect blame from the Soviet Union. But it's interesting what Leon Trotsky actually did during the revolution. He was part of a cleaner crew, basically. He ran platoons that were designed to shoot deserters, to keep people fighting on the front. But I'm going into a little bit of a rabbit hole. Anyway, that's what the story is about. I was leapfrogging off of that video game, which is actually a really interesting video game. I would encourage you guys to, take a look into it. It's, like I said, it's got these aspects of surrealism with it that I quite like. I was drawn to it. But, moreover, that's sort of the genesis of where I got the themes that went into the story. So what did you guys think? Feel free to comment down below on the story. And if you find this sort of content interesting, let me know. I've got some poetry I can put up, and I also have, I'm working on another piece of short fiction. So if you want to see more of my sort of fiction writing and non-prose writing, go ahead and let me know, and maybe I can feature that more on the channel. But either way, if you've been watching this long, I want to say, thank you. And again, thank you to my new subscribers, and I hope to be a worthwhile content creator that you can follow for a long time. At any rate, guys, if you would just like and subscribe, smash that like button, smash subscribe, smash lots of things. You know what I mean. But anyway, you guys have a great rest of the day.